Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy. Here we share new confessions every day.
They say betrayal always comes from those closest to you. Well, mine sat across the kitchen island, sipping his morning coffee, and told me he didn't love me anymore. Not just that. I need a different kind of woman, he said, without flinching. That's how my marriage ended, on a random Tuesday morning, with blueberry muffins still warm in the oven. My name is Calla Marin. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in a sleepy pocket of Vermont, now living just outside of Portland, Oregon. I used to be someone's wife. I used to be someone who believed in second chances. Not anymore. I met Elias when I was 24. He was magnetic, clever, the kind of man who made waitresses laugh and dogs wag their tails. Everyone loved Elias. And when he looked at me like I was the only person in the room, I believed him. We got married fast. Too fast, if I'm being honest with you now. But back then, it felt like a whirlwind fairy tale that I didn't want to wake up from. We bought a little craftsman house, painted it pale yellow, and filled it with hopes of a family. I worked in nonprofit fundraising. Elias was a tech consultant who always had 3 phones and 1 foot on a plane. I thought we were building something real. Turns out, he was building an exit strategy. The signs were subtle at first. The late-night texts. The vague, strategy dinners, with clients I'd never heard of. But I trusted him. Foolishly. Devotedly. The way women are taught to be, especially when they're told that being chill and supportive is how you keep a man. And then came that morning. He stood in the doorway with his perfect posture, his travel mug in hand, and looked at me like a stranger who had wandered into his kitchen. No apology. No shame. Calla, he said, I've tried. I really have. But you're not the kind of woman I want anymore. I need someone more, free-spirited. Less intense. More. He actually snapped his fingers searching for the word. Fun. Fun. I sat there in my robe, with cinnamon tea cooling in my hands, and I realized in that moment, this man wasn't breaking up with me. He was discarding me. Like a version of himself he had outgrown. And the worst part? When I called my 2 closest friends, Ainsley and Rory, I expected a lifeline. But what I got was an echo. Well, he's always been spontaneous, Ainsley said carefully, like she was auditioning for neutrality. Maybe you've changed too, Cal, Rory added. Maybe it's for the best. They chose him. Without hesitation. Without even asking if I was okay. That night, I packed a single suitcase, fed the sourdough starter one last time, and left my house, the house I painted, the house I believed would hold our future. No one begged me to stay. No one followed me out the door. But I didn't cry. Not then. Because something deep inside me snapped into place. Not a fracture. A foundation. And I whispered to myself in the rearview mirror. If he wants a different kind of woman, then he just set the real one free. They don't tell you how quiet life becomes after it implodes. The first week after I left Elias felt like I was living inside a vacuum. Not metaphorically, literally. Everything was muted. My footsteps, my breath, even my thoughts. I stayed in a month-to-month rental in a gray suburb outside Beaverton. It was one of those corporate furnished places meant for consultants or travel nurses, not women hiding from the echo of their own name. The walls were beige. The coffee was weak. And I had no one. You think you know who your friends are. But divorce, or whatever the hell you call a husband casually throwing away 7 years, is like a fire. The real ones stay and help you rebuild. The fake ones, they stand there, arms crossed, asking why you weren't more flame retardant. Ainsley sent one message. 1. Hope you're okay. Please don't make this about sides. You know I love you both. I stared at it for a long time. Not angry. Just amazed. How quickly love folds under the pressure of discomfort. I didn't reply. Instead, I spent the days on autopilot. Wake up. Stare at the ceiling. Scroll through job listings. Cry in the shower because that's where it feels private. Eat string cheese for lunch. Lie to my mom on FaceTime. Yeah, I'm good. Just need some space. I wasn't good. I was furious. And heartbreakingly humiliated. Because here's what I realized in that empty beige apartment. I had made myself small. For Elias. For everyone. I had spent so many years being accommodating. Palatable. Nice. Because I thought that's what a good wife did. I dimmed my ambition. I shrunk my voice. I laughed at jokes that made my skin crawl. I supported his every career move and let mine float quietly in the background. And now, he'd left me because I wasn't fun enough. One night, maybe 10 days in, I found myself sitting on the kitchen floor eating dry cereal out of the box. My inbox had 2 rejection emails, my phone had 0 messages, and I still hadn't changed out of the same hoodie in 3 days. I looked at the pile of resumes on my laptop screen and whispered out loud, to no one. I gave everything to people who would never bleed for me. It hit me like a freight train. The kind of truth that doesn't need repeating because your bones already know it. So I got up. Showered. And opened a blank document. Not a resume. Not a list. Just a simple title. Things I will never apologize for again. I wrote until 3 a.m. Having standards. Wanting emotional depth. Saying no. Making more money than him for 1 year and watching him flinch. Asking to be loved the way I give love. Not being easygoing about being neglected. Outgrowing people who outgrew their empathy. Leaving when I wasn't seen. Leaving when I was seen, and still not chosen. That was the night something shifted. Not a full transformation, not yet, but the beginning. The flicker of rebellion. The whisper of revenge. Not the petty kind. Not the dramatic Instagram kind. The quiet revenge of becoming the woman no one saw coming. They say healing isn't linear. Whoever said that forgot to mention how ugly it gets before it gets better. It took me 6 weeks to stop flinching every time I heard Elias's name. 8 weeks before I stopped checking his Instagram, only to find out he'd already soft-launched some 20-something with feathered brows and wine-colored hair named Cleo. 10 weeks before I realized I hadn't actually been crying in the shower anymore. The human heart is built for survival. And mine? Mine was done waiting for someone to come save me. I landed a temp contract at a creative firm in downtown Portland called Marrow and Mint. The name sounded like a hipster salad bar, but it was actually a boutique branding agency run by the sharpest, driest woman I'd ever met. Her name was Marlo Dean, and she wore oversized glasses and red lipstick like she was born in them. She didn't ask about my situation. She handed me a brief, looked me up and down, and said, "If you want sympathy, there's a Trader Joe's down the street. We're here to build empires." I was in. The work was intense, creative, unforgiving, and exactly what I needed. Late nights meant no time to spiral. Fast deadlines meant no time for pity. And slowly, brick by brick, I started building something of my own. But the real test came in mid-April. I was presenting a pitch to a new client, some sustainably sourced linen brand with too many silent vowels in the name, when I walked into the meeting room and stopped cold. Elias was there. He was sitting next to the head of marketing, laughing in that performative, loud way he always did when he wanted the room to know he mattered. His hair was slightly longer, his watch more expensive. He didn't see me at first. I had options. I could turn around. Let someone else take the pitch. Pretend I was sick or double booked. Instead, I walked in, set my laptop down, and said clearly, "Hi, everyone. I'm Calla Marin, lead strategist on this project. Let's get started." That was the first time Elias looked up and saw me. His face, oh, I'll never forget it, that microsecond of panic behind his eyes. He tried to recover, of course. Gave me that lopsided grin he always used when he wanted to disarm people. But I wasn't that woman anymore. The meeting went flawlessly. I made the client laugh. I connected every campaign angle to real consumer behavior. I closed the room with a standing invite for lunch and a firm handshake. Elias didn't say a word the entire time. Afterwards, in the hallway, he caught up to me. "Kala, you look, wow." I didn't expect. I didn't let him finish. "No, you didn't. You never did." He hesitated. That smugness slipping, just a bit. "I've been meaning to reach out." "Don't." He blinked. "Just wanted to talk. I thought maybe we could have coffee. Catch up." I smiled. The kind of smile that comes from remembering exactly how much you endured, and knowing you'll never go back there again. "Elias, you left me because I wasn't the woman you wanted. That's fine. But don't come crawling back just because I became the woman you could never handle." And then I walked away. Not dramatically. Not with tears. Just with peace. Because here's the thing about heartbreak, once it burns through everything false, what's left is real. And I was just getting started. There's a difference between moving on and rising up. For a while, I thought healing meant replacing Elias. Filling the silence with someone new. But that's not growth. That's distraction dressed up in a new shirt. Real healing? It's unsexy. It's the quiet decision, day after day, to choose yourself. Even when no one's watching. Especially then. By June, I wasn't just surviving. I was owning my life. I transitioned from temp to full-time at Marrow and Mint, and Marlo gave me a raise before I even asked. Said she hadn't seen someone take fire and turn it into clarity like that in years. I started boxing on weekends, not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because it felt good to hit back, even if it was just a punching bag. And one evening, I walked into a bookstore on Hawthorne just to kill time before dinner, and ended up standing in front of the poetry section, holding a copy of Szymborska, tears suddenly running down my cheeks. Not because I was sad. Because I had forgotten that I loved poetry. Elias always thought it was too abstract. Too emotional. So I'd stopped reading it. That night, I went home with 3 books, an overpriced lavender candle, and a decision. I would never dull myself again for anyone else's comfort. Not my voice. Not my edge. Not my intensity. And that was the night I met Auden Locke. He wasn't dramatic. Not flashy. Just kind. Deeply, unapologetically kind. He was giving a quiet reading from his debut novel at that same bookstore, something raw and dark and somehow still full of light. I stayed after, asked a question, complimented a metaphor. He looked me in the eyes, really looked, and said, "Most people don't catch that line. You read with your heart." It wasn't a pickup line. It was an observation. And that was what shook me. He wasn't trying to impress me. He was simply paying attention. We started having coffee. Then dinners. Then long walks through Laurelhurst Park, talking about everything from books to heartbreak to how many layers it takes to feel safe again. Auden never tried to fix me. He just listened. Showed up. And let me be exactly who I was, fire, flaws, and all. One night, as we sat on a rooftop watching the city lights flicker like breathing, he said something I'll never forget. "You carry pain like a sword. It cuts, but it also protects you. I hope, one day, you let someone hold it with you." I didn't cry. I just took a breath so deep, it felt like my lungs belonged to someone braver. Because here's what no one tells you. The right people don't just love you. They make you love being yourself again. It's been a year since that morning Elias told me I wasn't the kind of woman he wanted. 12 months. 365 days. Enough time for seasons to change, roots to grow, and a woman to become unrecognizable to her past. Last week, I stood on a panel at a national creative summit in Seattle, the only female strategist on the stage. I wore a navy silk blazer, sharp heels, and spoke about branding as identity reclamation. The room was packed. And when I finished, they clapped like I'd said something holy. Marlo hugged me backstage. "Told you," she said. "Empires, Kala. You're building one." But the most poetic moment? That came 3 days later. I was walking through the Pearl District, coffee in one hand, manuscript drafts in the other. Yes, manuscript, because I'm writing a book now. A memoir. About rebuilding. That's when I saw him. Elias. He was standing outside a cafe, scrolling his phone. He looked the same and yet, smaller somehow. Not physically, spiritually. Like life had shrunk him to match the truth he always ran from. He saw me. I could tell by the way his body stiffened. I could have walked past. Could have smiled sweetly, let him wonder. But I didn't. I walked up. Calm. Confident. The woman I became. "Elias," I said evenly. "How's Cleo?" His mouth opened, closed. Then, "We're not together anymore." Of course they weren't. He looked me over like I was a painting he couldn't afford. And maybe I was. "You look amazing, Kala." I didn't say thank you. I just nodded. "I always knew you'd do something big," he added. I guess I just couldn't keep up. It wasn't an apology. But it was the closest he could get. I gave him one last look. Not cruel. Just clear. "No, Elias. You didn't want to keep up. That's the difference." And I turned. Walked away. Not because I needed him to see what he lost, but because I finally saw what I gained. Myself. Auden met me later that evening. We sat under string lights, splitting a bottle of Syrah, and I told him the story. He smiled, slow and proud. How did it feel? I thought about it. The full circle. The fire. The ash. The new bloom. It felt like silence, I said. But not the kind that hurts. He reached for my hand. No. The kind that means you're finally at peace. So here I am. Kala Marin. 33. Unapologetic. Unafraid. No longer someone's wife. Now, my own damn legend. And to the women who've been discarded, underestimated, or left behind. Don't chase closure. Build something so beautiful. They'll never be able to close their eyes again.